Okay, hi guys. Thanks for joining us in on Friday afternoon. So as you all know that we have started the React community recently, and the idea is like more to help you out, guys, right? So there are two sort of audience if you look at from a different perspective, right? So one are like who are already working in React, and like we have like as you all know like we have a very strong team working in React probably for the last 5-6 years, right? We have actually delivered a lot of projects, and then we also have a lot of in-house good projects coming up and then planned accordingly. But then the other point of it, like the other sort of audience of it is who are actually just started working with React, or also like say I work in some different technologies but I do want to understand React and start want to go ahead with React. The goal of the workshop is basically, we'll be covering out with sort of things like, how, what is single page application, what is React, and then basically, how does React work. Then basically some building blocks of React. We'll be trying to looking into it, state and props example and components also. And then we'll be, ending it up by an example, like by a live example. So now coming to SPA, so what is SPA and what do we need it? I think most of you guys have some sort of understanding with SPA or a single page application, what is it, right? But then, if you look at, how way we evolved over the last, few decades and, how the requirements change. So over the years, like it was really important to sort of optimize our websites, right? So instead of like say a conventional website which has multiple pages and which say like, get, for every renders where it communicates to the server and then gets you renders the web pages, and that also like time consuming if you see overall, right? So there was this necessity to introduce SPA for that. And then obviously like since and then SPA is like something which it tries to sort of loads at once at the very beginning of it, and then it is basically like you can understand it as basically a building blocks of it, correct? So it loads at once and then it sort of updates dynamically on every request, and then of course like it uses less bandwidth as well. So that's what SPAs are important nowadays. But then you also like if it does come up with some things like say some disadvantages like ACOs and say like something like rendering it rendering the components multiple times, and then it also does not have a have something like a state management by its own. So either the libraries or the frameworks do it for you. But then also like irrespective of those things, SPAs are really handy when it comes in terms of the website's performance, because it's the size is lesser, because it is faster. So it is it actually plays a vital role in your optimization of it, right? So we always like as the way we always talk about web vitals. We always talk about decreasing the loading time and like increasing the optimization of it. So that is what where like SPS comes into place. And then why do you need React actually to implement an SPA structure? Because a lot of other frameworks as well use SPAs, like say for example Angular or Vue.js, right? But then why do you need it? And why do you need React, or like why do you think like React could be a better amongst all of them? So before we actually dive into that, like there are a couple of things. So one is React basically started 9 years ago by Facebook, and then since then it has been maintained in-house completely, and then it is like a free and open source library. Uh, like you can use it for building your UI components and stuff like that. And some quick facts about it is that it has like 194K starts on GitHub. It has 40.1K folks, and then obviously like it has been predominantly the first most popular front-end library by different sort of surveys for the past few years. And then like if you look at the left image in it, so this is pretty much clear, right? The library size of React is only 133 KB, and that too like including React DOM. But then as far as like it has even been reduced, like so far as far as I know, like on React 16.2, like if you that just think of React itself, only the React library, not including the React DOM and Redux, it has been somewhere around like 5 point something KB. I don't know exact specific number, but it's something near about 5.4 KB or something. And then at the same time, like if you look at the other competitive frameworks such as like Angular or Ember or even Vue, they are quite big in size with respect to React, right? So yeah, that is what like the major benefit is. So it makes the application very lightweight. And then apart from that, like it is obviously easy to use, it is maintainable, it is a components-based architecture. So the components, allows you to write your UI in your own customized way. And also like it has a very large community over the internet. So anytime like you face any challenges, you can just go to the Stack Overflow community or like any other places, and then you can write about it. You will get an answer. And the React itself, like React, like original documentation is also like gives you a very good understanding on how to proceed ahead. So that these are the benefits, or I would say like these are the things that you really need to understand while before starting working with a particular framework or new technology stack or library. So I think here React actually plays it very smartly. Now, how does it do it, right? So you must have you all must have known about something like a DOM, right? Document Object Model, and you also have probably worked with that. And then every time like you work with vanilla JavaScript or some similar some other technologies or framework, and every time you need to manipulate your DOM. So there are 3 steps involved. One is say accessing the element, one is updating it, and the third thing is of course re-rendering the entire DOM, right? So the first 2 things are still manageable, but then the DOM manipulation or DOM re-rendering is actually very expensive. So what happens behind the scenes is say like you have a requirement to change at like any element at like say n number of node, right? So it does not only change the n number of like nth number. So what it does, it actually traverses back from the nth to the top, right? And then it goes back to the top root node. And then from the root node, it actually re-renders your entire DOM, and that's what leads you to more time, right? So every time you request a DOM change, more time you actually spend behind loading the website or that particular web page. Now here React plays it very smartly. So it creates something called a virtual DOM. And what is a virtual DOM? If I want to speak about it specifically, so it's sort of you can say like a duplicate or a clone of the real-time DOM, right? So it is the virtual DOM is keeps React keeps the virtual DOM in its local state, and every time there are changes, it does not necessarily go back instantly to the parent DOM, to the JavaScript DOM, and say, hey dude, like I have this change here, right? So what it does, it instead it keeps the virtual DOM changes in the local state, and it processes it in a batch, right? So when I say it in a batch, so what happens is you can see like you can try to think out of an example. Let's say you have an div, right, at some nested loops, and then inside the div suppose like you have a text, right, and you want to change the name of the text to something. So it does not change it instantly. It does change it instantly, but it does not send it back instantly to the real DOM. So what it does, we'll see it in the next slide. So yeah, here it is again. So basically, this is how a virtual DOM looked like, right? It's nothing but a plain JavaScript object, right? So anytime like you create an element, a React element inside the render method by the return keyword, or even though like you use something called an React.create element, which essentially your browser understands end of the day. So this is what gets created, right? So this is an React element, you can say, or a virtual DOM. This is a virtual DOM actually, to be very precise. So you create the React element on the code base, and then behind the scenes this is what happens, right? So this is a virtual DOM, and that's how it looked like. Now if you look over here, right, it has 2 children. This particular node has two children. One is a div and one is an h1, right? Now suppose I want to change something on this h1, right? I want to change it from welcome to welcome GeekyAnts. So here comes the picture, right? So if you have like say working with JavaScript, right, or jQueries, or even in Angular, right, if you write document.get element by ID and then try to manipulate it out, so what it does, it actually goes back to the real DOM. It actually re-renders the entire, it changes at that particular places, and then it goes back, traverses back to the root node. It re-renders the entire DOM. But in case of React, it doesn't do that. It plays it very smartly. So what React does, it keeps it in its local state that okay, this property of this children has been changed, which is an h1 essentially, and then it waits for some times to other elements also to get changed, right? So say for example, my div also got changed, right? And then say for example, I have some other nested elements as well here. So React keeps those in mind in local memory, you can say, and then it processes all those changes at a batch to the virtual DOM, to the real-time DOM, and says, hey dude, like this is the like DOM which has been changed, and please compare it out right now. and re-render at once. So instead of rendering multiple times, React saves your times a lot in terms of to save it. By saving it in its local state, and then sort of processes those changes in a batch to the real-time DOM. Now, like how does it do it? So if you want to, if you dig dive into it, so this is what is called diffing algorithm. So it's basically it's like algorithm which sort of tries to find out the minimum number of operations that can be done on your, to be able to change your real-time DOM, right? So in this example, like if you see, right, so there is an 8 and 9. So this particular node has been changed, correct? So it does not instantly do it again. So it basically tries to find out, the minimum number required to do the performance. To do the changes, and that's how it increases the performance. And that's when the batch processing comes into the picture, which I already mentioned in the earlier slide, right? So that's what is behind the scenes, how you how the virtual DOM works and how it essentially saves a lot of time for you. And then if you also look at these two sort of piece of images, so these two are the major properties of our diffing algorithm, right? So it says that the component, when it does it, right? So it actually compare the nodes by its types. So if the types are same, then it does not re-render it. It just change the update to that particular attribute of it. So say for example, in the below example, you can see the titles have been only changed, right? So for the first thing, the title is title before, and for the second thing is title after, right? And then inside the component, if you look at the child component, which is my component in this case, so it does not re-render my component in this particular case. It just update the attributes value over here. But here in this particular scenario, since the parent element has been changed, earlier it was div, right? Later it has been changed to span. So it actually re-renders this entire component. So this is how diffing algorithm sort of comes handy, and it sort of has been where React sort of takes care of when to change or when to re-render a particular document object model and when to not, right? Or say for example, keeping multiple changes at a time and then sending it back at a later time where the steps included or the movements could be minimalistic. So that is what behind the scenes. Now, the other two important aspect of understanding React is how does it actually run, right? Because your browser, end of the day, does not understand JSX, right? So JSX stands for JavaScript XML, JavaScript for XML. But your browser, unfortunately, does not understand anything apart from JavaScript. But then how do it prepare your JSX code to be able to browser compatible, right? So there comes something called Babel. So it's basically a transcompiler. It is a transcompiler for, React uses it by default for many years now. And then the major objective of Babel is to basically sort of convert all ES6 syntaxes or all ES6 codes to the backward compatible older JavaScript versions of codes. You can use Babel on any other projects as well, right? Like any other frameworks. So for example, Angular by default use Webpack only, and Angular has their own compiler. But then you can set up a Babel for writing out or executing an Angular file as well. So yeah, this is what Babel is, and basically you can understand in one single syntax that all your JSX that you have written, it's Babel's responsibility to convert it to an browser understandable JavaScript file. And then if you dig dive into Babel, so this is what your JSX and syntax looks like in an React application or in a React file, and this is what your browser reads, right? So this has been processed through Babel, and Babel has been converted it to this particular piece of code, where this is nothing but a plain JavaScript, right? So by looking at this, you might think it as an HTML, but if you look at a bigger version of the file, so this is not. This is a JSX syntax, right? In React, because in HTML you don't have something called class name. It is always class if you are using any CSS inputs over here. So yeah, so that is what end of the day this Babel generates a plain JavaScript for you, which essentially your browser understands. And the other important concept here is Webpack. So it's basically a module bundler for JavaScript, right? So what happens is Babel compiles all your JSX code into JavaScript, but then there are HTMLs, there are syntax, CSS, right? And then there is also sort of a dependency graphs to be built, right? So by dependency graphs, I mean so in your code base, like there are a lot of dependence. There might be a lot of dependencies with components with other components or vice versa, right? So that is where Webpack comes into picture. So it actually bundles all your HTML, CSS, and your assets as well, and sort of makes an dependency graph, right? And then it generates a single file for you, for your browser rather, which will be a single source of truth, right? So you must have come across something like an config.js or a main.js file in the build time, right? So when you run npm build, so at that particular time, it generates a config.js file or a main.js file for you. So that is what is Webpack's responsibility to take care of it. So it includes it basically sort of collects that JavaScript code which is generated by Babel, and also all the resources and assets that you are using, and it makes a dependency graph, and then it like bundles up all these elements in a single JS file, and that has been exposed to your browser. That is basically used to expose to your browser, and that is the entry point for your browser to read your codes on. And this particular single JS file, whatever it is, this works as an entry point of your React application when it is rendered to the browser. Now that we have sort of come to know a little bit about how React works behind the scenes and what it is, let's also try to focus something on the on the basic building blocks of React, right? So the first thing comes is React element. Like React element is very similar of say like any of other HTML element, or say like so what happens is basically whenever you type create in a normal JavaScript, whenever you do document.create element, it generates an HTML for you. But in React, it generates basically an object for you end of the day, right? So you write it in JSX syntax. That JSX gets converted to React.create element when your browser understands it, and then this is what your React element looks like. So this is nothing. This is a empty div basically, and then like you don't have any properties associated to it, you don't have any children associated to it. But then yeah, this is what a sort of a placeholder gets created whenever you try to create a React element. Now here, like we have sort of dived into it a little bit with the help of JSX. So eventually you use JSX to create your React element. So this is what your JSX look like. So you have a component, right? And then like you are using some classes, you have a div, and then inside the div you are printing an hello world, right? So once your JSX got converted to a React element, so this is how it looks like, right? So your browser end of the day understand your component as a React element, but nothing else. So this is what your browsers understand end of the day. And then coming to this topic, like this is one of the again like very major topic of entire React ecosystem usage. So component, right? So components are basically the building blocks. To be able to write anything on React, you need to divide it in a componentized architecture, and you have to sort of build reusable code. So the major idea behind component is that you don't write repetitive code throughout your projects. You put it on different smaller components, and those components are reusable. Like you can reuse any component at a later point of time from anywhere that you want. And then there are two major types of components. One is class component and the other is functional component. So the class component is nothing but it's generally you can see the syntax also besides, right? So it's basically an ES6 class, right? And like it has a render method, and inside the render method your UI actually goes in whatever UI you write in JSX expressions, right? And then it is also called a stateful component because it controls the state changes and the other implementations logic around it. And then on the other end, there is something called functional component. So before React 16.8, so if you wanted to implement state or something, so you always had to use class component, because functional component by default were only read-only, and they were not allowed to sort of have their own states. But then now with React hooks, you can basically implement state and other things in React functional components as well. And like right now, React also officially emphasizes you to use functional components. So yeah, that's what is about React components. Now, another essential topic over here is keys. So a key is basically, you can say something to understand by React, which is unique, right? So like React ideally should uniquely identify a particular element, right? Say for example, you were using a list of n number of elements, correct? And then you can, I mean, there are two ways to assign keys to your list, right? One is like you can just assign the like corresponding index positions, and the other one is obviously like you can like assign some like some sort of unique keys to that, like unique values to that, right? Which is not repeatable at any point of time. So that is obviously like the right way to use it, because like say I mean, whenever you are using index, so index are fine whenever like the list is static. Like say you don't need to manipulate the list, you don't need to insert it at a point, right? But then any time that your list is not static, it has to perform some sort of in and out operations. I mean, push and pop operation. You have to find out a way to use a unique keys. And then, I mean, in case like you don't have something like an ID or something, so you can basically write a generator function, and then you can use like some sort of unique keys over there. So also like you can think it something like an array or a linked list, right? For an, I mean, that's a very abstract example, but then yeah, that came into my mind, which is basically, I mean, probably can make things easier for you. So in an array, if you say have to, I mean, say the length of the array is 10, right? And you have to put some element, insert some element at the second index. So what happens is like you shift the entire, like all the elements from position 3 to 10, one right shift, right? So that is time, I mean, memory consuming. But then in linked list, you can directly, link it to the tail of the previous element and the head of the next element, right? So that's how it I mean, sort of it behaves. So unique keys are like always the preferable way to make a list whenever you are basically using any list in a React in React. So I mean, that's how React try to remember your list elements inside it. So now coming to like probably last few things. One is state and one is props. So a state is basically you can say just the state of particular component. Okay, so it contains basically the data of, I mean, data about informations of that component, how that I mean, what was the component, how it got changed, right? So in this particular example, you can see like they are using something called like a count, right? So this is a very typical syntax of React state, right? So, and if you look at this picture over here, it I mean, denotes you that, right? It walks you through the syntaxes properly. So this is the name of the state. This is the function. So it's generally like a get setter, I mean, get setter method that you used to write in any of the model classes. So that same concept is also there. Like you have a variable, and then you have set and then variable, right? So then use state, and this is the initial state which you are going to use, right? So in case of an integer, if it is an integer, you can use it as 0. If it is a string, you can use it as an empty string or null something. And then like that's how like your state gets updated. So every time you click on a button, so one important thing over here is like, why is state important in React, right? So in an say conventional programming language, say in JavaScript only, right? If I wanna like say this is my some variable like late or var, and then count. And then like I just on this button click, I just want to increment the count of it. So what I would do is I would generally like increment the counter of this button, count plus plus. That will do the work for me, right? But then React does not I mean do it. So if you try to do it in React, so what happens is I mean, you can see that variable value has been changed, but the state for the variable has not been changed. And why like React refer to state every time? Because like if you also have some concept about two-way binding in like say Angular, right? So it does like have a two-way binding inbuilt, and then it knows that this variable got changed over there and the reference has been changed. But in React entirely depends on state. So to be able to sort of make any changes to any variable that you are using, you have to make the change, make change in the state of the variable. And when you are like, once you have made the state change, then only React will be re-rendering it in the UI. So every time there is a state change, there is a re-render associated to it. So the only way to sort of rendering your UI with an updated value is to use the state variable over here. On the other hand, like you have something called a props, which is more like a read-only property, right? So it does not have any control to accessing its own state or some sort of things like that. So these are majorly read-only, and these are majorly used for passing towards a stateless child component. So this is what props. I mean, you can go through this example once again, and then this is how you use the props to a component, right? And then like basically here, like if you want to change the full name in this particular location or anywhere in this file, you won't be able to ideally do it because you don't have. I mean, you don't have the right permission for props in React. So now, so before I go back to the example section, so there is anything to ask. If there is anything to ask, you guys can throw me out your questions, and then I'd be able to I'll love to answer them out. Anyone, guys? Okay, no question. Cool. I think the following up example, I mean following up segment is more over designing and counter app. So the same example that I showed you. So we'll be trying to build this counter app to understand how React works behind the scenes. And for this, I'll hand it over to Shivarshi. So Shivarshi, you can take it up from here.
Hi, thank you, Arindam. So just give me a second, please.
So you can share your screen, I think, and you can proceed ahead. Let me stop the sharing for now.
So can you see my screen now?
I think yes, you can see your. No.
Okay, just give me a second.
इसको बंद कैसे करेंगे भैया? Presentation stop. Someone else will present now.
How about now? It's visible now?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, so hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Shivarshi, and let's just quickly go over a simple React app. We're going to build a counter app. So since as we saw, the React apps are single page applications. So for the HTML of a React app, we don't need much things. We just need a div, a simple div, and this is the div that we're going to pass to a React to render our app into. So this is a div, and we have given it IT a root, so we can identify it in a JavaScript element. So first of all, let's just get hold of our root element, which was a div, the ID root. So we can go a document.getElement by, and we can get it by a root. So this is the element in which we are going to render our React app. And now let's just form a start. We will start with writing a component. So let's just make a component call a counter. This is a functional component. So we are going to make it as a function. And components return JSX. So let's return a JSX from it. And now we have to render this component on our web page. So to render a component, first we need to make a create root element. We can do this by, let's just call React root and call a create root method on our root element, which we have gotten from our index file. And now it's going to give me error because we need to import a create root element first. Okay, so now this is root element, and now we can call this React roots render method. So you can call render method, and we can pass which component we want to render on our web page. So this component is called counter, which we just created over here, and now we can render it. So now we can see our hello is appeared on the web page. So for a counter app, we would need basically three things. First, we need a display which would display our counter value. Let's say we start with a 0. And then we would also need two buttons. And we can call label one as minus to decrement the counter and one as plus to increment the counter. And from a component, we can only return a single HTML or single JSX element. So these are three elements. So we could wrap it in a, so there is something called this basically looks like an empty JSX element, and it's called a React fragment. So it's basically like a div, but it doesn't get rendered to our actual HTML page. So now we can see our counter app is here, but we don't have any functionality in it. So now let's add the functionality to it. So one thing we need to take note of is that, so our counter value is something essential to a counter component, and we want to update our UI whenever the value of the counter change. So we can put our counter value in a state. So we can create a counter state and set counter method. Can call use state on it, and we initiate it with a state 0. And for buttons, we also need to add a functionality. So let's say on click of a minus button, we want to decrement the value. And on click of the plus button, we need to increment the value. Now it's going to give error because increment and decrement are not defined. So let's just define it quickly. And now we don't need to display our hard-coded 0 value. We can instead use a counter value, counter state. So in JSX, whenever you write something between a curly braces, it should be a JavaScript statement, and it gets evaluated before written so value. So if I just out counter here, it will print a simple counter over here. Like just prints a counter, but if we want to be evaluated before outputting it, so we need to put it in a curly braces. So now let's give the functionality for the increment and decrement. So on increment, we need to increment the counter value by 1, but since the counter is a state, we cannot increment it directly. We need to call its accompanying setter function, set counter. And set counters take a callback function in which the first argument is the previous value of the counter. And from there, we can return a new value, which will be the previous value of counter plus 1. Similarly, for the decrement, so we can have to call a set counter function, and the new updated value of the counter would be previous counter minus 1. So with this, our functionality of the counter should work. Let's check. Yeah, so it's working now. And if we want to make our display somewhat more fancy, or so we can just create another display element, display component, and from we can there return, let's say we return an action in which the text is of red color. And we have to enter something in the H1, so we can pass what to render in a props to a display, and we can render it out here. Now instead of putting our counter value in div, we can put it in our display component. We are calling the property text from props, so let's pass it in a text. And now we can see it's an H1 with a color red, and we still have our functionality. Thank you. Uh, Now this is our basic.
So any question, anyone? Guys, pick something at least so that we also, can understand that whether it, came to any work to you or not, whether it did add any value to you or not. You can speak
Hello.
anything, like if you liked it, if you not liked it, what could be a
Yeah,
better.
it was fine. We liked it, and I got to know how to get started with React. And hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're
Yes,
audible.
yes.
So my question will help beginners to understand what React is. So suppose what if we use a normal variable instead of state and increment account?
So you are asking what if instead of making a counter variable as a state, we just passed it as a normal variable.
Yeah,
So the one thing that would happen that the state will not update since we want to re-render our UI whenever our counter value is updated. So we pass it as a state. And
okay.
second, I think value will not persist either. So the value of a state persists during the different re-render. So basically in a re-rendering, this entire function is ran again and the return value is displayed on the web page end. So if we don't put in a state, when the function will run again, it will revert back to its original position if you don't use state.
On every rendering.
Yeah, on every render.
Can I set the counter without calling the set counter?
You probably should not. You can, but it will not re-render the like. So basically, how the React knows that some state was changed, it happens because we call a set counter method and it is responsible for re-rendering the element.
So what happens if I pass this increment function inside set timeout callback function?
Okay, so if you passed in a set timeout callback function, so basically the state increment will take place after a while, but so what happens is in a set timeout, the state gets stuck. So if you increment a function one with a set timeout and by the time the state has been something else, so the set timeout doesn't know that the state value has been updated since it's being called and since it start execution.
And suppose if I press the button twice, does batch updating take place in that case? If no. In if with the set timeout only. If the set timeout is applied and then I click the button twice.
Probably it does. I need to look it up because the how the batch up changing works has been updated in React 18. So yeah, the thing in React 18 event listeners and the set timeouts also are batch updated. I'm not sure. I have to look it up. I'll get back to you.
Thanks.
Where we are passing the arguments for the set counter method. Actually, it has been declared there. The argument is previous counter. But where we are passing, suppose we are
Okay, so you are asking about text equals to counter this part.
no, there const counter equals to sorry, const increment equals to set counter, previous counter. That argument where we are passing, because
Okay, so yeah,
for
please
any
get.
function, we need to pass argument. Then only it can take it and increment it up.
Mhm. So how set counter works is the set counter takes a callback function, and when set counter calls the callback function, it passes a initial, matlab, whatever the value of the counter is at that time, it passes it as a first argument. So we don't have to pass it; we just have to pass a callback function to a set counter method, and the argument which you see here is passed to the callback function by a set counter method. So we can just call it like update function. It takes an value and returns the x plus 1. And now we can pass this update function in here. So the value of X would be passed in by a set counter. So we don't have to pass it. Yeah, it still works. So, like, anyone want to suggest any future topics that you want to see to be covered in this workshops or talks? Any suggestions regarding?
Can we have one more on this topic, like next? Like, because we are new to the ReactJS, so we'll be able to learn more and more on this topic.
Yes, so Aman, answering you is like, yeah, we are like planning to sort of, recurring workshops or events on React, right? And the entire motive of community is that, right? So we are starting to, like, say, planning to divide it into scenarios. One is for, the beginners and one is for the intermediate developers, right? So what we will do is just after this call, Shivarshi will be sharing a Google Doc link, Google link with you. So there you can basically rate how this session was, right? Any questions that you have regarding this session, and also you can select, so sort of, suggest us any topic that you need in future to be presented or to be, worked upon on any workshop, so that we will be taking all those feedback and will be, coming up. Letting you guys know what is the next time we are having any sort of, similar sort of. Hello, am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Someone suggested, I guess, microservices on front ends, like kind of micro front ends with React.
So Shivam, saw your question. So what do you want to mean? Like, is it microservice or micro front end?
Microservices on the backend.
Okay, so these, that I don't know. Like, probably that will not be a part of this particular community. But then there is another community started up, API and backend and API. So you can probably.
Can it be like React custom hooks and another one like material UI, like this type of topics?
Yes, there can be.
I also wanted to learn like many new topics, or topics that are very rare in React, like scale states kind of things.
So we do plan to cover more on the advanced part of the React in the upcoming workshop. So this series is basically in a progression, and we started with a mindset. Well, we started with a very basics on the React, so everyone could be on the same page. And gradually, we do intend to cover all the topics from intermediate and advanced part of the React as well.
Arindam, to circle back to your first question, who would be the right person to approach for API and backend stuff?
So I think there is a community start. In Q, named backend and API, or API and backend. So once that community gets launched, you will be notified on the channel.
All right, thanks.
So this is basically for front
And
end.
then, yeah, coming up to like your question on microservices. We can probably, like have some presentation on microservice, or like have some session on microservice, but that would not essentially be a part of this particular community. Okay, so we can have it like any other time, or say on any other tech talks that we do. But then, yeah, that will essentially not be a part of this community at this time.
All right, thanks a lot.
Welcome, Sivan. Okay, guys. So any other question?
Hello.
Hey, Gaurav.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. So, what I want to ask is, are we going to look in terms of improving performance and SEO? So that will help us, I think.
Yes, we can. So we are noting down the points, right? So if we transfer it to a series, then of course, like, there will be points of topics. That are coming up on every Friday, or like at least twice in a month, and then you will be like able to know what other topics that are coming up, and then that list will be preparing upon the feedback that we are getting from this call, or like from the Google Sheet that we'll be sending across. So coming to your question, yeah, we can have.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Trived, you can have TypeScript with React. Like nowadays, using a strongly typed language sort of helps you out in a lot of ways. So we can cover one of the sessions on how to use TypeScript with React. Thank you, Shivam. Thank you. And also, like, feel free, like as I always say, right? Like I'm saying from the very beginning, feel free to reach out to me or Shivarshi, or like ask anything in the React community channels. So we have all the channels available for you, right? And then anything that you think that that could have been better, or that, I mean, for a particular topic you need more idea on, you can just ping us on the community channel. Plus, along with that, like any one of you, if you like want to say come across for presenting something, presenting some ideas, or so taking up any workshops, you can just ping the same on the channel or on like Shivarshi or to Shivarshi or me as well. So yeah, it's not necessarily that the leaders and moderators will only be taking the sessions every time. So anybody like who has come across like or who want to come forward and then take the responsibilities, you guys are like always acceptable. So yeah, I mean, just come across, I mean, reach out to us, and then if you want to cover anything or take a session on, we can arrange it for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arindam.
Cool. Anything else, or I think we are good to end up the call for now.
We are gonna post a feedback form on the React community
Right.
channel. So if you have any suggestions or any ideas for the future, or what you want to see, please do fill it up.
Correct.
Thank you.
Also, probably my last point, like if any of you are still not being a part of the React community, you can just join the community on Slack. And then once we post the link, you'll be able to like you will be notified, and you can input your ideas on that. Okay, thank you guys. It was a good session. It was nice to see all of you here. So thank you. We'll be again coming up probably on next Friday or very soon. Like let's not commit a particular timeline, but yeah, we'll be coming back very soon, and then we'll again have this sort of sessions frequently. Thank you guys.